Sahano Vavatu, Sahano Bhunaktu, Sahaviryam Karavavahe, Tejasvinavadhitamastu, Ma Vidvishavahe. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Two parts that are worth reminding that came up in a previous session. What Ishwara is. Okay, and we use an example of a car. And we said that the car's fuel is representative or symbolic for Ishwara. Okay, so that means the fuel is that power which powers the instrument. And then we use an example of a person, that is the driver, sitting in the car, who is operating the vehicle, that is the body, who, by some indirect action that has happened in the world, maybe in association with someone else, who caused the driver indirectly to have an emotional breakdown to the point where by the act of driving the car, this emotion has caused the mind to be not sharp, not attuned with the traffic. And because of this indirect influence, the driver has caused the crash. So then we said, and I asked the question, can we then attribute the crash directly to the fuel? And the answer was no, because the fuel in the car did not push the driver to cause the crash. The fuel did not speak to the driver. The driver was completely free of the fuel. In fact, if you drive your car, you don't even smell the car fuel, do you? So that means you don't even see that power because of which powers the very instrument that we use to think, to communicate, and to assess the world. Okay? And also we said that the fuel cannot be indirectly attributed to the driver's crash because the someone else in the world, that is the Jagat, caused the person to crash the car. So this is a little bit of a tricky question, because when I ask such a question, the instant focus is to look at the fuel, isn't it? She said, she brought up an objection, and the objection was the fuel is indirectly responsible. And that was a good objection. So we said it's not. Now, we have to understand that the fuel, it depends where your focus is. If the focus is on the fuel, right, then you could say such a statement. But if your focus, if you understand that the fuel belongs to a different order of reality, then the car and the driver and the traffic and the people, then you cannot attribute or you cannot bring up such an objection. In other words, we have to understand that the fuel is independent of that which it powers. That which it powers belongs to the final effects, that is the world, the Jagat. Now, what happens in the world does not affect the fuel. The fuel was just providing the means for the world to work out its karma, to work out its communication, to work out its actions. One example that we're going to use is, if you look at here, for example, okay, before I bring that up, Ishwara is not Mithya. Ishwara is this line, if we were to represent it, is this line in between. Now, there's no in between, but I'm just using this language in between. Satya and Mithya. So what does this mean? You see that? This line is not affected by whatever happens underneath it. So let's explain this. Ishwara is other than Satyam and other than Jagat. Now you're saying, what does this mean? Simple example. We'll go to our example that never fails. Look at the ocean, for example. The ocean, the whole ocean, is other than the water, and it's other than the what? Jagat, the waves. All of the effects that depend on the ocean for them to work out their movements, for them to work out their karma. So that means the ocean is the water, but it's also not the water. The ocean is the wave, but it's also not the wave. The ocean, being Ishwara, is other than Satyam and other than Jagat. So what does this mean? It's only because of the ocean that the waves can correspond and move and have high tsunamis, low tsunamis, and all sorts of different movements. Without the ocean, waves cannot do what they're doing. But the ocean is not involved by the totality of all the movements that happens because of the ocean providing that capacity for the waves to do so. Is this clear so far? So that means Ishwara is other than Satyam, even though Satyam pervades Ishwara. And Ishwara is other than Jagat, even though Ishwara pervades Jagat. So, understand this. Ishwara is a power in consciousness. They are inseparable. So that means Ishwara depends on Satyam, but Satyam doesn't depend on Ishwara. Just like the wave in the ocean with two eyes and a brain, that's called a person, depends on the ocean, but the ocean does not depend on the wave. Why? For example, if, let's say, the wave gets blown, right? The wave's just blown away. It doesn't affect the ocean, does it? So that means you can have so many waves doing whatever their movement is, whatever coordination is, by their interaction, and yet Ishwara, that is ocean, stays independent of all of the movements that happen in the world. Okay? So this is supporting why it's important to understand that Ishwara, God, is not directly nor indirectly responsible for whatever happens in the world. Okay, look at another example, okay?
Okay, can I just...
One more example. Okay. If I give you money, okay, I'm giving you what? I'm giving you the capacity, the power to do as you wish, right? Money. Now, what you do with that money, that's up to you, not me. Not me, the giver. Ishwara, being the giver, simply provides the laws and orders for the jiva, the taker, to use them as they wish according to free will. Yes?
So to take the analogy through to the fuel in the car, the fuel, as in the petrol, is a benign substance until it gets converted into energy through the engine, through the spark plug, through the bang, where it actually is what drives the car. Otherwise it's just
yes,
fuel.
yes.
Benign.
In other words, fuel remains
Which part
impotent.
is the Ishwara between the fuel and the spark and the energy and the explosion which makes the engine go, which makes the car move?
The spark is part of the Jagat. Yeah. Fuel is just there to help the spark and help the spark's effects. For example, the spark itself causes,
it's
certain...
the driver pushing the accelerator, which creates the fuel flow to make more energy, which then makes the car go, isn't it? So I'm just trying to get that responsibility back to the rightful owner.
Yeah, we're bringing this example into too much mechanics now. Stay isolated, because I know every example has a weakness, okay? So we need to isolate the examples to just what I'm providing. Otherwise, you can always break down an example by your logic. Yeah? Okay, I said...
I feel you might have been addressing a question I had last week about where you, in previous lessons, talked about the jiva was innocent of just about everything, and that everything was coming into the world through Ishwara. They were presenting the situations, and so the individual was like bound to their karma or everything, and so they're not to blame for anything. So I guess that's a different... That's a different perspective. Yeah.
See, you can't ever put a definitive perspective here. So it wasn't a perspective valid at that time when I gave it.
Right.
Now this is another example. So it's your job as a listener to reconcile how they actually have no contradictions. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I confirm? Is Ishwara Brahman?
Okay, we have words to help you see that whether we're talking about Brahman or Ishwara.
Okay.
When I speak of Ishwara, okay, what does Ishwara mean? All knowledge, all power, manifest. That's what the world is. All knowledge, all power, constantly being manifested right now, right now, right now, right now, right now. Where is a baby coming from? From intelligence, from some intelligence that puts the embryo together, that puts the sperm cells together and then create 4 cells, 16 cells, and so on. Where does that intelligence come from? From that which pervades, which is the ocean, every form, including the embryo being the wave. Understand? So wave is like an embryo, and the ocean pervades, ocean being what? All knowledge, all power, pervades the wave, pervades the embryo. That's why the embryo has this intelligence, and you ask, where is it coming from? From that which pervades the wave, being Ishwara.
So Brahma is the potential for that to happen.
Unmanifest.
Brahman is neither manifest nor unmanifest. Why? Because if I say that Brahman is manifest, what's the implication of that? There's the unmanifest. So now we have conditions, 2 conditions. Now what do we say about Brahman? It is attributeless and it's non-changing. Thus it can either be not manifest, neither unmanifest. Okay, please get this. Brahman completely remains free of manifestation and unmanifest. That belongs to Ishwara.
So there's no conceptualization of Brahma.
Yeah. Okay. I use an example of free will. Yeah? Okay, I use an example of free will. Now, this came up on our conversation, so I just want to cover free will briefly, okay? Free will simply means the freedom to exercise one's will. Okay? What is free will? Freedom to exercise my will. Now, think about this. If I am not educated, then is my freedom to exercise my will limited? Of course. If I know, let's say in a particular field, does my freedom to exercise my will, that is multiple choices, increase? Yes. So that, for example, let's say that a woman finds herself in a very threatening situation, and she has not learned how to prevent, an upcoming clear situation of a rape. Now, her choice in that moment is very limited because she hasn't had education how to use psychological tactics to defend such a situation. Whereas a woman who has, for example, read about that, she can pretend to cough, and this really works, by the way, act disgusting, like she's puking, just act gross to turn off the opponent, then by that virtue, her education increases her ability to exercise her free will. Okay? So that means all free will means is my ability to look at one position and another and then use my intellect and say, if I choose this, what is the next upcoming consequence? If I choose this, what is the next upcoming consequence? Is the totality of these consequences any better than this one? And which one would play for the best advantage of the environment? By that use of the intellect is where we have free will. Okay, so so that means in order to exercise free will, it depends on how educated the person is, but it's still there because I can stop and I can say A or B or C or D. That's where it practically is free will explanation. Okay.
Can I just jump back quickly and catch on to that?
Yeah.
Just more clarity on the function of Brahman then?
The what?
The function of Brahman.
The function of Brahman. There's no function.
Ishwara is the concept.
Okay. How can you give a function to your awareness? Awareness is just aware. Now, what it's aware of has nothing to do with awareness. That belongs to a different order of reality, which we call mithya. So, okay, using your language, you could say, quote, the function. No, we're not going to say that, are we? No, okay. Brahman is just awareness, period. I'm not even going to say that,
You can't conceive of Brahman.
Yeah.
It's
Because as soon as you put it into a concept, you actually put a
You've
boundary.
got here Brahman.
Yeah.
You've got here Ishwara.
Yeah.
and you've got Atma.
Yeah.
So who is related to what?
Okay. So Atma.
We're all one.
Yeah. Okay, no, simple answer. So Atma is Brahman conditioned by 5 vestures or the 3 bodies.
Okay. So
Okay.
Atma
Is exactly
is
Brahman.
like Brahman.
Yeah.
And Ishwara
Is Brahman.
is Brahman, but a manifested Brahman.
In the form of a jiva, a person with 3 bodies or the 5 sheets.
5 questions.
Or just stick with the 3 bodies. Person, okay. Brahman equals consciousness conditioned by meat. That looks like a person.
No,
Okay.
that's all. Yeah.
Period. That's Atman.
Yes. Brahman.
Apparently
That I
conditioned.
understand.
Apparently conditioned. Brahman is not conditioned, only apparently conditioned.
Yeah. But then you talked about Ishwara
Yeah.
being manifested.
No, it's not. No, Ishwara is neither manifest or unmanifest. Ishwara is just a power that constantly manifests and unmanifests according to the environment's needs.
So what does it manifest?
Manifest means it's, okay, my hand's here, now my hand's here. See, my hand unmanifested from here, and now it's manifested here.
Yes.
What provided me to move my hand? Air, number 1, air. Who makes the air?
Yeah.
Ishwara. The fact that it's not solid, so it provides me the ability to move my hand freely through the air. It's just laws and orders which power and make the world possible, like gravity. Without gravity, then we could still be alive, right? But if you take gravity out, then you could call up Ishwara and say, Ishwara, can you please give us back gravity because it's really useful? Now, Ishwara would say yes. So that means, what is Ishwara? That power, all knowledge, all power, which provides for the world to function and do
Okay.
what the world does. Okay? So you could take out gravity, please, gravity. Okay, so Ishwara is that power which provides. But it's not involved in what it provides. Because I explained, you can either, take the money for good use or not good use. Okay, let's move on. Okay, we said, let's chant this. Nadate kashyachit papam nachaiva sukritam vibhuhu ajnanena vritam jnanam tena muhyanti jantavaha. Okay, here it's saying that the problem, people deluded, where is this? People, muhyanti, people are confused. Muhyanti, confused, jantavaha. So people are confused. So we now have to ask, what is the source of confusion, right? The source of confusion or delusion, which is what? Causing suffering to the person, is ignorance of, as we discussed, higher self. Higher self meaning Atman. Okay? Lower self meaning Ahankara. Okay? Meaning what? Doer, enjoyer. Okay. So, the cause of suffering, of delusion, is ignorance of the self. Now, a little story. Imagine that a seeker in a dream who finds themselves in the world, never mind the dream, but in a world who has seen enough about the world's offerings. That means the world has provided enough clarity what the world's all about. And the seeker says, I've seen enough. It's not a big deal. I'm not a kid anymore. I'm not so fascinated anymore. So the seeker begins to look for, in the dream world, by the way, the seeker is in the dream world, begins to look for a dream acharya. Acharya is teacher. Okay? So a dream seeker in a dream world begins to look for a dream teacher. Why? Because the dream student spent most of her life trying to improve the dream world for themselves. So it fits better according to their raga, dvesha, their likes and dislikes. So in other words, the dream character went to seminars and events and asked, how can I have a better relationship? How can I have better, happier emotions? So the whole life, dream life, was spent in trying to improve and manipulate the dream world, okay, by this dream seeker. Now, the dream seeker sees it's not really working because no matter how much I improve, there's always more to improve, so it never really ends. In other words, I'm still unfulfilled. So the dream seeker now has matured a little bit to the point where he or she is ready to start looking for a dream acharya. Now, the dream acharya tells the dream seeker that what you're experiencing is actually a dream. Okay, so the dream teacher says to the dream character that what you're experiencing is a dream. And you, Mr. or Mrs. dream character, are actually free of the dream. So then the dream student says to the acharya, but I don't feel free, dream guru. Why do I not feel free? So then the dream guru says, it's not about trying to feel free, but the awareness that you just told me that you don't feel free, that awareness of not feeling free, that awareness is higher self. The person that is comfortably sleeping in bed with an air-conditioned room, completely safe. So then the dream student goes, are you telling me that what I'm looking for, myself, being awareness, I already have, since I just used awareness in order to discern the fact that I'm not really satisfied? And then the guru responds, yeah, you already are using, you already are, that awareness is your higher self. Thus, put your attention onto that awareness and stop entertaining the never-ending, oncoming questions of whether I have got it or not, or whether I am feeling free or not. Why? Because whether I feel free or not belongs to a different order of reality called the dream. And I cannot help myself but to feel certain emotions in the dream, but my job is not to continue feeling the emotions in the dream. My job is to recognize that that principle which is constantly aware of the emotions in the dream is who I actually am, the dreamer who is outside the dream and actually completely free of the contents of the dream and is very, very safe. Therefore, now the dream guru tells the dream student, learn to constantly put your attention back onto that which is the very essence in whose presence the emotion or the lack of is recognized for what it is, being your awareness. Okay? So then the dream student says, so that means I'm supposed to what? Worship awareness? And the dream acharya says, yes, because there is no higher worship in the world than that which pervades the whole world, being what? Brahman. Brahman is what? Consciousness. So then the dream student recognizes, so I've been worshipping forms. But now you're telling me that the worshipper who's been worshipping forms is using awareness, and that awareness I thought was located elsewhere in the form, but I actually have that what I was worshipping. The guru says, yeah, you already have what you were worshipping. So then the student says, so if I have what I'm worshipping, I know I'm using the word have, so then why do I not feel it? And then the guru keeps reminding, because as soon as the student walks out of a Vedanta class, it's back to, why do I not feel free? So then the student comes back into the acharya's class, and the acharya says, you already have what you're seeking. And then the shishya, the student recognizes, oh, okay, I do have what I'm seeking. And then the shishya walks out, forgets again, and then comes back to the acharya, says, I am lost, I don't feel free, I feel confused. The guru says, you already have what you're seeking. Recognize that which you're seeking is using you, called awareness, to recognize what you're seeking. Thus, stop putting your focus on what you're seeking. put your attention back on the awareness, which has to be there prior to recognize what I'm seeking. So this journey between in and out keeps going on for years and years until this have-ness is established as I, and it's not a question whether I have it or not, I am that. Therefore, on the beginning, it's always starting as have or have not. That's completely normal because there's this condition in us to see Atman as something other than myself. So this subtle equation of have is natural. So that's why the guru has to speak the language that the student feels comfortable with. If I just say to a person, no, you already are, that feels way too much. So we start off very, very, very gently. Okay. And then we said, what's the benefit of re-identifying with the self, with the higher self? 2 parts. The first part is, if you look at the condition of the world, it involves basically, I have to get things done, life is too short, and give me another phrase. So many things to do in so little time, right? Okay, so that means time factor is involved for the person. And the other is, I have to get to places, I have to see things, I have to experience things, right? So then one goes and buys tickets, plane tickets, spends on the Hawaii, on Bahamas, on Fiji. So many travels happen just because of this simple idea that I am this body and mind. That means the benefit of re-establishing my identity with the self, which is always present as awareness, then the need for spatial fulfillment, that is to be somewhere other than where I am, and temporal satisfaction, that is to do things which I have not already accomplished, that subsides completely. Because the limited aspect of the human being is the body, no doubt, which we know is going to die. So if the I remains associated with that limited aspect, then naturally these 2 spatial and temporal limitations are going to be felt, are going to be sensed, are going to be a concern for the individual. When the I is placed back onto that which is ever-present, birthless, cannot die, here, right now, not subject to time or space, eternal that is, then these 2 concepts of spatial and temporal naturally subside slowly, slowly, slowly. Not immediately, slowly, slowly, slowly. That's why the student keeps coming into the guru's class, into the acharya's class, okay? So it takes a long time. And the student should be okay with this.
So why do saints and sages go to a place like Kailash and they go to very sacred places like
Speak louder.
Why do saints and sages
Yeah.
go to Kailash and Varanasi and all this? Why is there some certain place that's so holy and
well, if you know,
they recognize the holiness in themselves?
Yeah, because everything's seen as the self, so it doesn't matter if they're worshipping. It's a representative for the self, but it doesn't matter what they worship. Okay, if they're not allowed to do that, right? Because they're so-called jnanis.
They're not allowed. Why do they need to go there?
They're not. It's not that they need. It's out of love. Okay. If I don't go because I'm so smart, I'm so everywhere, does that limit the person? Is that a limited person or an unlimited person?
Limited.
That's a limited person. That means a jnani can still do as they wish according to their natural likes and dislikes, which are always going to be there, as long as the body is alive.
So we as human beings traveling to a place, this could be the love for it also.
Also can be love. See, there's always multiple aspects. Yeah.
So it's widening our knowledge more and more.
Of course, yeah. So it can be out of respect, out of reverence for that symbol which I revere, which represents the beauty of Divine Mother for me. So then I will go and worship. But it can also be for a regular traveler to go and experience just a waterfall or something, which also in one way represents Ishwara, just in a different way, in a more harder to see way. Because if I go to a nightclub, for example, I'm still looking at beautiful Ishwaras everywhere, forms of Ishwara, but it's much harder to see the divinity than if I go to a Varanasi, for example, where the symbol of self is clear. Like the Nandi, the bull who's always looking at Shiva's temple, that means me, the ego, the Ahankara, is always looking at a reminder of that which represents divinity. And as long as I keep my eye on that, then I'm not going to get swayed away. Yeah? So there's many symbols of this.
This is bhakti, right?
Huh?
This is bhakti?
You could say it's bhakti, yeah, but bhakti is always true. Bhakti is always true for a worshipper. One who, bhakti can be even your parents. Bhakti can be animals or nature. Now, whether you know you're doing bhakti or not, it doesn't matter. It's still bhakti. Okay. Now, the diagnosis of the problem is over. Okay, we spoke about last week that the problem is ignorance. Now, let's talk about the cure of this ignorance. Verse 16. Okay, we go together. Jnanena tuttadat jnanam yesham nashitam atmanaha tesham adityavad jnanam prakashayati tatparam. Okay, so if ignorance is the problem, ignorance of what? The higher self is the problem, then what's the solution? Remove the ignorance. Okay. If bacteria is responsible for pain, then how do you get rid of the pain? Do you attack the pain or do you attack the cause of the pain, being the bacteria? So then what's the antibiotics for ignorance? Jnana Yoga. Okay. So let's discuss this. And we're going to answer now, what part do sadhanas play in our lives? Okay? I already said this is going to be answered in verse 16. Okay, darkness, for example, can only be removed by what? Light. Okay. Suppose you're born in a dark room. And we're all born in a dark room, because anything born is by nature ignorant. It doesn't know. If you know who you are, there's no birth for such an individual. Okay? So everything's born ignorant. Okay, so we're all born in a dark room. And we start to, we kind of see something, I want more light. I don't feel quite full here. I want to turn on the light. Okay? So what happens is we start to chant in the room, in the dark room, right? And we chant. For years and years we start chanting. Is chanting, action, going to turn on the light? Okay, let's say now we go in the room and we start meditating for 10 hours a day, doing every known meditation technique that's ever been devised in human history, including all the Kriya Yogi gurus. And then we do that for, let's say, 10 years in the dark room. Is that going to bring light into the room? No. Let's say, for example, that we have philosophical conversations, how this is all not darkness, it's all just an illusion, right? We all kind of get into this intellectual argument, like, this darkness, this is ignorance, it's actually light, right? Is that going to remove darkness? Okay, let's say we want to awaken the sleeping serpent stuck in the Muladhara chakra, awaken it through the Shushumna so it goes out the Ajna or the Sahasrara. Okay? So let's say we all have a Kundalini Awakening. Is a Kundalini Awakening going to turn on the light? Okay. Let's say we want to all feel God's presence. Let's all put our hands on our hearts and now let's just feel God. Is that going to bring the light? It will, in one's own mind. As long as the feeling lasts, it's called pratibhasika. That means it will, as though the light has been brought in. Why? Because an individual can generate any experience that is as good as the original. You know this from your own experience. You can have a really wonderful transcendental experience, and it seems like that's it. That's the final. A human being is very good because we have sophisticated minds. Now, we all feel God, and when the feeling is over, and what happens? Darkness starts to set in. Why? Because the subjectivity, the mind, cannot hold a thought for a long time. So it subsides eventually. So it's back to darkness. Can affirmations, I am awareness, all else is illusion, can that turn on the light? That's a common one, right? I'm awareness, I'm the self, I'm eternal, I am free, I am limitless. This is all illusion, this is all Maya. Is that going to bring in the light? How about 10,000 asanas from, let's say, Hatha Yoga, or, they're all wonderful. We'll talk about their beauty. Ashtanga Yoga, or any kind of yoga in particular, visualization. Is that going to turn on the light?
When you say turn on the light, you're talking about artificial lighting.
Is it going to bring in the light? So what are we saying here? We are establishing action is not opposed to darkness. What's the only thing that is opposed to darkness? Light. What's the only thing in the universe that is opposed to darkness? The only. Light. Is it going to be, can it be action? What's action going to do? What's action going to do? There's only one thing opposed to darkness, i.e. ignorance, being what? Light, i.e. knowledge. Okay, so we have established two principles so far. One of them is only light is opposed to darkness. Okay? And the second is action is not opposed to darkness. Clear? Okay. Now objection is going to come up. It's going to come up soon. Isn't Advaita Vedanta another action? Isn't contemplating this knowledge another action? Isn't thinking about this another action? Isn't listening another action? Isn't going through what is satya, what is mithya? Isn't this viveka also another action? Objection, right? Yeah. So how do we get out of this one? Okay. What we have to understand is every action has a benefit that is true to the object which it addresses. For example, if I want to learn skateboarding, the action of skateboarding is going to remove my ignorance of not knowing how to skate. If I want to, let's say I'm ignorant how to surf, then what only surfing knowledge is going to remove my ignorance of surf ignorance. It's going to remove surf ignorance. If I want to learn chemistry, then will physics knowledge remove my chemistry ignorance? That means to remove chemistry ignorance, I need chemistry knowledge. If I want to remove my knowledge of how to be calm as a calm person, then I do what? I go into mindfulness knowledge. Can mindfulness knowledge remove, let's say, calculus knowledge? It helps, because if I learn how to be mindful, that is how to think straight, how to be sharp, then it helps with everything, does it not? It helps with surfing, it helps with skateboarding, it helps with physics, with everything. It helps, so it's not useless. So we're not saying action is useless. We're saying every action has a benefit true to the object which it is meant for. Now,
Can you mark that in the notes?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. So, okay. Things just flow sometimes, so I'm probably not going to write it. So that's why you need to write the notes down. Yeah. Can mindfulness knowledge remove self-ignorance? Okay, remove that example. Okay. Can physics knowledge remove chemistry ignorance? So only physics knowledge can remove physics ignorance. Can mindfulness knowledge remove ignorance of how to be calm? Yes, because it's meant for that. It's meant how to just see, be present. Can mindfulness knowledge remove self-ignorance. We had chemistry ignorance, biology ignorance, communication ignorance, persuasion ignorance, sales tactics ignorance, self-ignorance.
Yeah.
It cannot move.
Can it?
It can help you.
It can help.
Cannot help.
So what does this mean? Yoga can certainly help. Hatha yoga, Ashtanga yoga, meditation, visualization, breathing, any kind of technique you give me, the answer is yes, it helps. But can it remove specifically self-ignorance? So then what kind of knowledge do we need to remove self-ignorance?
Self-knowledge.
Atmanyanam, self-knowledge, Brahma Vidya, Jnana Yoga, they're all synonymous words. So what we'll come to the conclusion is, okay, summary. All practices purify the mind. Okay, all of them. They have their benefit, no doubt, indisputable. But can they remove specific knowledge of self, ignorance? No. They help, but they can't, because why? We just talked about it. You can't remove physics knowledge unless you have physics ignorance unless you have physics knowledge. You can't remove self-ignorance unless you have self-knowledge. So that means you need specific knowledge to remove the specific problem being about the self. Now, here's the important point. What is self-ignorance? Self-ignorance is being ignorant about something which I already have. Whereas physics ignorance is being ignorant about something that I don't have. You see the difference? If I don't know how to surf, I don't already know that knowledge now, so I have to go and learn it. I have to remove it by surf knowledge. But self-knowledge, I am removing ignorance, so it reveals the knowledge which I already have of myself, of who I am right now. Two different types of knowledge. One is I don't have it at all, the other one is I already have it right now. Okay. So, Atma Jnanam removes avidya, ignorance. Okay? Okay, so now we're going to ask how to gain self-knowledge. Right? That's the next question. Okay, well, now we know self-knowledge. We need self-knowledge to remove self-ignorance. How to remove how to gain this self-knowledge? Chapter 4, verse 34. We haven't covered chapter 4. I've integrated to chapter 5. We said this, I think, first or second session. Systematic and consistent study of Vedanta for a length of time under the guidance of a competent acharya. So what is Jnana Yoga? And how to gain Jnana Yoga, self-knowledge to remove self-ignorance? Chapter 4, verse 34. Systematic and consistent study of Vedanta for a length of time under the guidance of a competent acharya. So now we know how to gain self-knowledge needed to remove self-ignorance. Okay. What will this do once gained, right? What will this knowledge do? Okay, I'm just going to use this. Okay, here it says it reveals. Okay, that Brahman. Okay, it reveals Brahman. It reveals the self. Now, if it was, it has to be pleasant, right? If it was unpleasant, then you wouldn't be chasing this, would you? Right? If it was some self that makes constant pain and gives you a toothache all day and gives you, mental, psychological issues, then nobody will be chasing this. So this self has to be something that is pleasant. Like what? Limitless, independent of what? Objects in the world for happiness. Cheerful, generally cheerful predisposition.
Liberated.
Birthless. Which one?
Liberated.
Liberating. Content with the world. Right? Not concerned so much about the world. I'm not going to say totally non-concerned, right? That's just not concerned that much. Everything's fine. Everything's normal. This is just a small little time frame in the eternity aspect of creation. So everything's fine. In other words, the self is what we're all seeking as what? Form of Ananda, which is limitless. We all relate with happiness. We all want to be happy. So this self, the manifestation of Brahman through the body is what? Felt or experienced as happiness. So that whenever we're happy, that is a glimpse of what Ananda is of Brahman. Okay? That's why we all relate to it. We can't help it. Nobody wants to suffer. Why? Because everyone is the self. And what is the self? Happiness. Limitless. Yeah, that's why we all relate to it, whether we know it or not. Okay. Just imagine, just to continue this thread, walking in the dark. We're walking in the dark, right? And we don't have a torchlight. And then we fall in a hole. And what happens? We fall and we what? We suffer. So what is it like for an ignorant person? Just generally, we're not putting down anyone. The person is walking in this world and there is an inner fall in a form of anxiety. This is, for example, what some of our texts like the Bible says, the fall of man. It's very easy. Once the man put his focus on the apple, that is the desire of object, he forgot about his nature. Thus the inner fall. So that means that ignorant person constantly falls and then gets up again and then looks for something else until he falls again. And he keeps falling until one brings the light, what? Lights up the room. Okay? So that's very simple so far. The difference between being ignorant and this self which we're all looking for. Now, of course, a normal person is looking for this happiness in short bursts in this world. Is he not? Yeah. And these bursts last. They are surely a symbol of this Ananda, of this limitless. But the problem is it doesn't last. So the person eventually says, enough is enough. I'm now going to look for permanent satisfaction. Okay, and then the person starts to go into the spiritual journey, which we'll now get to verse 17. Okay, verse 17. Tad buddhayastadaatmanaha tanishthastat parayanaha gachantya punaravrittim jnana nirdhuta kalmashaha. All right. I'm going to break this verse down into, this verse is revealing sadhana. So the next question now is, how do we all bring this into a practical sadhana, right? Everything we talked about, ignorance being the problem and the cure, now tell us the practice of doing this, yeah? Verse 17. So I brought this down into parts, and we're going to, because this verse is revealing the sadhana, and Sanskrit has a funny word arrangement, so I brought it down into proper word arrangement so we can get the order. Okay, first we have, it's talking about four stages of sadhana, okay? 4 stages of sadhana. So let's delve into them, that everyone must go through to gain successfully self-knowledge, okay? The first one is tatparayanaha. Okay, tatparayanaha. What this means is, at this stage, I, like I said, have gone through enough in worldly matters to recognize that there's something higher than the temporary worldly satisfactions, right? So what happens is, for every person, the goal starts to get from temporary to permanent, yeah? From temporary satisfaction to permanent satisfaction. We all agree? Who wants temporary satisfaction over permanent satisfaction, right? So that means the stage comes to, I want myself, my full self, right? I want to feel full, whole, complete, present. I want to know who I am. I want to know what I am. This is stage 1, okay? The problem is the Ahankara The Ahankara, for an ignorant person, depends on external factors, okay? The Ahankara, the door enjoyer. It depends on external factors for its enjoyment, satisfaction. Is this not true in the world? We depend on our family, we depend on certain things in our life, friends, knowledge, our house, our transportation, our health, our looks, our mental capacity, whether we feel sharp, whether we feel dull, whether we can communicate. We depend on all of these factors as a person who is just getting into this. Yeah, all agree. We all share this. So that means that I depend on external factors for two things: my happiness and my security. Okay. In other words, the direct manifestation of this in the world is constantly changing and modifying the world to suit my raga dvesha, to suit my likes and dislikes. This is a condition that no one is an exception to until self-knowledge is gained. This is what drives the world. I like something, so I go and pursue it. I don't like something, so I go and avoid it. Is there anything else? That pretty much sums up all humanity. Likes, dislikes. I mean, even Facebook has like and dislike button, right? So that's why we're all stepping up and down. The problem that this creates, Ahankara association, is I'm constantly trying to change the world. That means giving others a hard time. I want to change my wife, my husband, my children, my friends. Why? Because I cannot accept, because they do not, match my likes. That means it's got nothing to do with them. It's about satisfying my likes so that I can feel good. You see? Okay. So this is the condition of having this association with Ahankara. That is, I'm unable to accept the world, my family, the conditions of the world, and myself, especially myself too. Right? I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not old enough. I'm not young enough. I'm not good looking. I'm not, whatever it is. My status is not enough. Unable to accept myself as I am, which has a direct correlation. Therefore, I'm unable to accept the world. It's a direct mirror reflection. Okay. The statement that such a person says is, I want to be free, right? I want to be free from all this. That's the statement. I want to be free from being dependent, from having to depend, wanting to be happy by engaging in certain things in the world. I want to be free from everything. I just want to be myself, happy as I am, without having to do anything. So the person is making an assertion, a confident assertion, stage one, which is exactly what moksha is. What is moksha translated into worldly day-to-day life? Feeling comfortable with the world. Nothing special. That's it. I just feel comfortable. I don't have to change anyone. I don't have to modify anyone. I don't have to manipulate anyone. I'm fine. Everything's fine. No big deal. Nothing mysterious, nothing mystical, just comfortable. Everything's all right. Simple. Okay, just imagine, to explain this, ocean. Okay, ocean. The ocean, does the ocean depend on the rivers that flow into it?
Yeah.
Okay. Ocean is always full, is it not? If the rivers don't flow into the ocean remains what? Full. If the rivers flow into the ocean still remains full. Yeah? I know you can always limit the example. Now you're going to say, well, there's going to be 0.1 millimeter more in the ocean if all the rivers flow. Okay, just keep it simple. So, the ocean remains full independent of the rivers that flow into it. So imagine a river now says, hey ocean, you need me to be full. What does the ocean do? The ocean doesn't even reply. Why? Because the ocean knows it's actually to the contrary. Because the water from me evaporates and then falls from the sky into the mountain, which then creates rivers. But the river, being so narrow-minded, doesn't know that. So the ocean just patiently waits for the river to gain some common sense, and then it doesn't even have to say it. Because if the ocean says to the river, no, you're wrong, the river is so limited in its knowledge, it's going to refute or not accept that statement. So the ocean is very patient. Patience always wins, right? Always. Okay. So the direct, how do we translate into moksha? Someone who's directly living, I am the self. How does this translate? It would be as good as saying, I am the ocean. And, which is what? What's ocean? Always full. Yeah? Ocean is always full. And the rivers that flow into me are what? Experiences. Now, what did we say earlier? Whether the rivers flow into the ocean remains full. Whether the rivers don't flow into the ocean remains full. Thus, translating it directly, what is moksha in real day-to-day life? I am the ocean, always full, always whole and complete, cheerful, independent, whether the experiences come to me or not. That's moksha in real life, just ordinary life. Yeah. So we have established two parts. In stage 1, tat parayanaha. The struggle for modifying the world, that goes, right? I'm tired of modifying. I can't win. Every time I modify the world changes and I have to modify it again. It's a never-ending struggle. So this struggle in stage 1 goes naturally. And what leads then? Discovering my higher self. Now, stage 2, tad buddhayaha. Okay, so this buddhi, buddhi, right? Intellect. In this context, tad buddhaya. Okay, in this context, it is not intellect. In this context, it is Jnana Yoga. Okay? So stage 2 is speaking about a person now, having realized the goal, does what? He goes to the Shastra, to the scriptures, and starts to pursue directly what? Knowledge to discover this higher self. So stage 1 was the goal, but there was no material. Stage 2 is, now that I have the goal, I know what I want, I go then and look into the Shastras, find an Acharya to pursue this goal. In other words, pursues Atma Jnana. That means knowledge of Atma or Brahma Vidya, the highest knowledge. So stage 2 is, I want to know Paramatma and I pursue Shastra to achieve that goal. So stage 1 is what? I have a goal, but it's not put into action. So vision of the higher. Stage 2, pursuing the goal, the actual pursuing. The book is in my hands. Okay. Now, stage 3, tadat manaha. Okay, the question now comes is, common example, right? I have done stage 1. Okay, I have gone through stage 1. I have pursued the Shastra. I have heard of the higher self. I know what the higher self is, but I still identify with the lower self. Isn't that the natural, what we all go through? Huh? We hear about Atma, we know Atma is infinite, but we can't help ourselves but to still keep associating with the body, mind, intellect. Stage 3. In other words, stage 3 is, I am filling the blanks. That am afterwards still continues, and it's genuine. I am teacher, I am student, I am wife, I am husband, I am someone who's going through the Gita. I am someone who's pursuing spirituality. This am, filling the blanks, still continues. And I can't help myself but to speak like this and to feel that I am this person, despite having heard the best knowledge there is. Stage 3. Okay, let's talk about why does this happen. Why is it despite hearing this, we still associate innocently with our body, mind, intellect. It has to do with, okay, I'll give you an example. What happens to a jackpot winner who's been like an ordinary person making small money? When they win $1 million, what happens usually? Not all of them, but some of them.
They spend it all.
You get shocked.
Why do they spend it all?
Not necessarily. You might invest in
What
it.
causes them to still spend all this money? Habit. Vasana. What is vasana? Tendency, habit, or preference. That means I cannot help myself but to still play out my addictions, my habits, my tendencies, my preferences. And despite having heard the best knowledge there is, I still feel powerless. These vasanas are so strong. They're like the roots of the ground. Try pulling grass, right? It's very hard to pull the roots. You can tear the grass off, but the roots are going to remain. So these vasanas still remain strong. So the conclusion so far at stage 3 is, I am a samsari, right? I'm a normal person, and I have the higher in the form of knowledge of Atma, and that Atma is liberated. Huh? I have knowledge of Atma now. I'm now educated what Atma is, and that Atma which I know of, that Atma is liberated. That's stage 3. That means I'm still speaking
That's the other.
as indirectly, as it's something other than me. And it's not, and I'm not even lying. I'm being genuine because because I still feel like a body mind. I can't lie and say I'm Atma, right? Stage 3. So this stage 3 goes further. We call stage 3 shifting the I. So now we're getting into a little bit of practice, how to solve the problem, shifting the I. Shifting the I is training, please highlight this word, training myself to switch from the lower self to the higher self. Now, what does lower self mean? Just some examples. I am wife. I am husband. I am mother. I am father. I am son. I am daughter. I am a devotee of Ishwara. I am a sannyasi. That's also another one. I am a dharma upholder. I am that one who upholds dharma. I am. It never ends. Constant role association with this I am. I have finished the Gita. I have gone through the best knowledge there is. Another lower self speaking. I am in the best class. Another lower self speaking. Okay. Even a sannyasi has this problem. So don't think sannyasis are free. A sannyasi will say, you know, I have renounced the whole world. But you know what the Shastra says? The sannyasi says, I have renounced everything. But the Shastra comes in and says, have you renounced the notion that I have renounced everything? Huh? So the notion that there is some I that has renounced, that still hasn't gone. That's why I keep saying I have renounced the world. Even that has to be renounced. Okay, so now we need to talk about how to train ourselves to go from lower to higher. Now, one point. This lower to higher takes the longest time. This is where the hard work comes, right? We can all come and hear about the higher self. It's easy. The easiest thing in this whole journey is to hear about what the self is. Super easy. But the actual work is consistent training, constant repetition until it's automatic. Okay. I want to now bring a point. Grihastha and sannyasa, we talked about 2 lifestyles. Because chapter 5 is what? Sannyasa yoga, the yoga of true renunciation. So we have to talk about what is the purpose of sannyasa. Now, go back to I am this and that. What do we say? Ahankara. This ahankara keeps us binded to these roles. This is our problem. This is why we cannot disassociate so easy. Now, every time, here's the problem. Every time you deal with a person in this world, or a situation, someone close to you, or something that you have to attend to, every time you do that, ahamkara has to be there, does it not? Otherwise you can't deal with the world. So that means every time I deal with the world, my ahamkara gets reinforced. That means I reinforce the very problem that I'm trying to disassociate from. Now what you're thinking, uh-oh, I'm not a sannyasa, right? So how do I switch? Don't think like that. Well, I'm just stating the problem. The problem is, okay, why does a sannyasa renounce the world? To facilitate not constantly reassociating a sannyasi's ahankara to the world. Because the goal of a sannyasi is to detach oneself from this association to ahankara, that the I is the ahankara. And the sannyasi has figured, if I renounce or pull away, cut my ties with the world, then I'm not going to be reinforcing the ahankara so much, so it's going to be much easier to start associating with the higher. You see the logic? So that means a sannyasi cannot renounce the world unless a sannyasi knows what we just spoke of. Otherwise, if a sannyasi goes but he doesn't know what's the purpose of going, then it leads back into regression. So sannyasi has to know, I'm going to help me to disassociate from the ahankara, because every time I go back to the world, I can't help it. I have families, I have connections, and every time I communicate with them, it reinforces the fact that I am a role. Okay?
Even the sannyasi coming to that realization and donning the red robes as a sannyasi and shaving his head and going out there and identifying as a sannyasi is again putting that role.
That can happen, yeah, absolutely. That can happen, but it doesn't happen all the time, you know? So we never know. Just because someone's got a shaved head, you just don't know what's going on. You will never know. It's not your job to know. Let them carry their journey. This is your journey. Okay. For example, if I go to my parents, what happens? I invoke my dad's ego. That means my dad becomes I am dad. And he speaks to me. I go, I am son. You can't help it. You're innocent. You have to deal with your parents. You have to deal with the family. Right? So this is why we're saying that a sannyasi realizes that I need to help myself out by cutting ties. Okay, now, here's the big instruction. Since we're all grihastas here, if you weren't if you were a sannyasi, you would not show up here, because a sannyasi is already educated, already has the scriptures in their hands, already has the knowledge of this. They just need their alone time to contemplate. So we're all grihastas. We can all establish that right now. So that means, you're like, yeah. Okay, so that means that the question comes up is, how do I deal with the fact that my ahankara is constantly being reinforced when I transact with the world, right? Big instruction. Write this down beyond everything else. We spoke of this last year, and I said briefly, a head called Atma that is constantly putting on what? Hats. Hats being what? Roles. So let's translate this into real life. A grihasta, in order to gain the benefit of a sannyasi, that is not to constantly reinforce the ego, the ahankara to the world, has to decide that I am only playing a role. Decision. That means I have to come by myself and say, I cannot get away from the world because I need to attend to worldly duties, but I can in this 1 hour just spend telling myself from this moment on, from the rest of my life, I decide that I'm still going to be in the world, but I'm going to remember that just like the actor who's on the stage is what? Always sure that the mask that I'm putting on, the role that I'm playing, I'm free of that role. Why does the actor on the stage not mistakenly associate their identity with the role? Because they have to get paid. In other words, if I forget my role, then what happens? Imagine the actor jumps off into the stage and goes, save me, because they forgot their role. People will be like, what's wrong with you? You need therapy. So it pays you to retain your identity as apart from my role. That means I have to decide from now on, I will still be in this world, but I choose to recognize I'm only playing a role. If I don't do that, power of decision we're talking about. Power of decision. Power of taking an hour for yourself and saying, from now on, this is it. I can't go anywhere, but I can establish the fact that I am free of the roles, and I can stay with myself as that knowledge, as the awareness, which is what? Apart from the roles that I'm playing. I am just an actor putting on different roles to transact with the world. Is that clear? Role. I choose to play a role. It's something that you have to have a conversation to yourself by. Isn't it strange? Something so simple we never do in our lives. We just naturally fall into these roles. And why? And then we get lost. Why? Because we never decided at some point in our lives to say, you know, I can't get away from the world, but at least I can just decide that this is all just role playing. I can still be vulnerable, I can still cry, I can still weep, I can still mourn, I can still be concerned, I can still hug someone, I can still, you know, be a human being, but I can also know that all these roles are just roles, and I'm free of those roles. And the world doesn't even have to know this, only you do. This role is what we call nididhyasanam. Now you understand what nididhyasana means. Ema shravana, manana, nididhyasana. What is nididhyasana? How to establish myself firmly in this knowledge. If you come to Vedanta and then go back to the world, there is no way to establish myself firmly in this knowledge unless I'm constantly reminded that I am an actor, I am apart from the roles. If I don't do that, then the world's going to default. It's going to take me back in, right? Simple. So, nididhyasana is constant practice that I am independent of the role that I'm playing. I still have to play the role, but I'm independent of the role. Very simple. Okay.
So
Now,
so I've got a question.
Yeah.
So, but that, me knowing I am only playing a role is a jiva
yeah.
knowing, or a mind knowing that it's only playing a role.
I
But then I feel like, I'm going to use Ramana,
Yeah.
if he met his mother, he wouldn't have to remind himself, I'm only playing a role. There is nobody in there that is playing a role at all. I feel like there's a difference between me constantly reminding
Yeah.
myself, I'm not playing a role, I'm not playing a role,
Yeah.
and having an empty mind, and there's nothing actually...
Yeah, that's only stage 4. That's a natural byproduct of practicing stage 3.
Oh, okay.
Now, so that's where we're going now.
Oh, okay. So,
Yeah. That's where it's supposed to go, actually. So you don't have to think about it.
yeah.
Okay, stage 4 is tanishtaha. Tanishtaha. Okay, tanishtaha is... Okay, tanishta is deliberate practice. Simple. Deliberate practice. Now, what is deliberate practice? This is the last stage, right? Deliberate practice means and goes like this. This body, listen, this body is just an incidental instrument that I use. What does incidental mean? Another word for incidental is non-essential. Non-essential. This body is just an incidental instrument I use to transact with the world. That's one way to practice, right? You're having a conversation. These sense organs are just for my use to transact with the world, right? You're just affirming what's obvious. This mind intellect, that is my mind intellect, is just a media for transacting with people, with the world. That's it. That's all it is. It's just a medium. It's just a medium given to this person, so he can work out his karma, so he can, discover self-knowledge. It's just given, and I use it to discover who I am, but I do not associate with it. It's just given to me as a privilege. I could have gotten a body of an animal, but I've gotten a body of a human being, thank God, and I can use it to discover my higher nature. Okay? So that means you see what you're doing? You're constantly now in a stage of what? Discerning that I am not the body, not the sense organs, not the mind intellect. You're not saying, you're not denying, you're just preliminary stage, you're just saying I'm not it. You're just having an objective view. Okay? So that means I'm not the instrument of, I'm not the instrument, I am the awareness of the instrument. Very simple statement. Or I am the consciousness behind the instrument. That's watching the instrument performing its function. I am the consciousness behind the sense organs, behind the mind, the confusions, the different thoughts that go on in the day. I'm just the constant, non-changing consciousness that is behind all of these thoughts. So you're just getting into this conversation of objectivity. Okay? Practice. Remember what I said, training the mind. So what is this done? What happens when this is done repeatedly? This constant repetition, objectifying my body, my mind, my intellect. This is what we, what Tom is saying. It leads to spontaneity. That means after some time, and it can take a long time, of talking like this, I am not the body, you know, and I'm the consciousness behind the body, and role playing constantly. I am just a role here. And by the way, you don't do this thing, role, while you're having a conversation with someone. What did I say? This is a decision. You come to yourself, and then you go back to the world, and you continue. I did not say at any moment you do this while you are playing the role. You do this before, because when we're in the role, we're in the role, and I need to be focused to play the role. There's no time to having, I'm not going to be present if I'm thinking, oh, yeah, I'm just a role here. You need to do that alone, and then continue with the world, right? Because then it becomes another thought that's agitating. Okay? When practiced constantly, this leads to spontaneous recognition that this body, mind, intellect is indeed other than me. Okay? Other than me. It's spontaneous. Just like with, let's say, bicycle riding, right? Spontaneous only came after what? Consistent training, like with anything else. And when this is complete, that is, when I've completely disassociated from the body, mind, intellect, then we call this tanishtaha. Okay, so tanishtaha, stage 4, is referring to the completion of recognition that I am something other than my body, mind, intellect. So let's summarize. Step 1. Okay, stage 1. Tat para yanaha. Okay? What do we say about step 1?
Cognition.
Cognition? I love that word.
I think a vision.
Oh, we use cognition.
Vision.
Vision. Cognition of vision. Vision cognition. Value. Okay, so stage 1. We can also say I am discovering the value of the higher. I discover what's the value of the higher self. Okay? Step 2, I actually discover the self. Before I was just entertaining a vision. But now, having gone through the Shastras, now I'm actually learning about the self. Okay? Action, that means practice. That means actually reading about it, coming to class, getting to know it. Stage 3,
Recognition.
Stage 3 is learning to identify with the higher and gradually disassociate from the lower. And we call this shifting the eye. And how do we do this? We gave you a simple role-playing. Okay? I decide to role-play, I make a decision to role-play, and then let go of this idea. So we're okay, we're not role-playing while we're role-playing. We're not thinking about role-playing. Okay. And stage 4, tanishtaha, is the identity, having now practiced the higher, becomes spontaneous. Okay, so that the result is it's spontaneous now, having constantly practiced. It becomes natural. That's what we want, natural. Okay. Now we have the last word, Jnana Nirdhuta Kalmashaha. Okay, once I have practiced the 4 sadhanas, I am freed from the person. I am freed from the doubts or the regrets of the past, the excitements of the present, and the anxieties of the future. That pretty much sums up a human being. Always thinking about, the past, regretting the past, excited about what's happening right now, or entertaining and having anxious about the future. So the person is freed from these conditions. Because why? These conditions belong to the owner of these conditions, which is the Ahankara. But because the Ahankara is now being disassociated from, they don't belong to anyone. They belong to the jiva, but not the higher self, which is the same I which is pervading for all of us. Okay, so the ignorance, buts, shoulds, have tos, all of this just goes, right? Because all this belongs to the raga dvesha, the one who wants results for their own benefit, which is the Ahankara. And this is what we call a jivan muktihi. A jivan muktihi. That means a person that is liberated while living. Now, when does a jivan muktihi, a jnani, a wise person, when does a jivan muktihi die?
When he gains the knowledge.
Good one. Never. Okay. What dies when the jivan muktihi dies? The body. The jivan muktihi doesn't die. For a normal person, when there's death, what happens? The gross body and the subtle body dies. Okay? Now, what's in the subtle body? Ahankara. What's the Ahankara? I. So that means as long as the I is associated to Ahankara, then it's going to be fear. Because the body is going to die, and so essentially an ignorant person dies. In reality, they die because they died while the I was associated with that which died, which is the Ahankara. So the I essentially died. The ego died. But they thought, so from their perspective, they died. But from our perspective, we say, well, that's not true because the I was independent of the body. But a jivan muktihi, who has disassociated from this I that will die, the lower self, then, as Tom said, when the body dies, when the prarabdha karma is over, that means all the duties have been done for such a person, then the body dies, but the I, which never was born in the first place, which is Brahman, that continues as it always does. So nobody really died. Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.